All right. Thank you. And we're back this week, or tonight, we're going to be talking with, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher his last name, Russell Nohelty. I'll bring him in and he can tell me how wrong I pronounced his name later. But he's the creator of Ichabod Jones. And I found it while kind of just perusing through Kickstarters, and I saw that a couple of my friends had backed it. So I checked it out, and it looked like a very interesting project. So I thought I'd see if I could get if Russell would come on, and he said yes. So let me just bring him in, and we'll get this started. Hi. So how bad did I but how bad did I butcher your last name?
It's the number one butchering. It's Nolte, not
Nohelty.
Nohelty.
Okay.
But considering
Okay.
that most of my books are about demons and hell and mythology, it probably would be more accurate to say Nohelty.
Well, again, I'm sorry. I'm notorious for butchering names.
That's okay. I give people a 50-50 shot. They're either going to say Nohelty or Nolte. I don't know why they don't say Nohelty, but it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. As long as you spell my name with two L's, I don't mind.
Okay. Well, so do you? One of the first questions I usually like to ask in an interview is, do you remember the first comic book you read, or kind of maybe the one that got you hooked?
Also, it's tough because I read comics in the 90s. So I remember Death of Superman and like the cable muscles and all of those things in the early 90s. I guess maybe late 90s. I forget the exact year that Superman died, but that was kind of the last time that I read comics, honestly, was this Death of Superman until 2010. So that would be probably a 15-year gap. I went to college. I was in movies and TV, and then what really brought me back was my manager at the time handed me a big stack of independent comics and was like, "Have you ever thought about making comics?" And I was like, no, I want to make movies and television. Like that's not a comic. I don't understand. He's like, just go back and read these. I think your sensibility would be really like good. And he handed me some of the Halloweens that were coming out at the time, some stuff from Devil's Due and Image and IDW, and just like a general Dark Horse, a general like sort of. It wasn't even the super popular stuff. It was just like a stack of comics that existed,
Hmm.
and I went home and I read them all, and I was like blown away by what people were doing in comics. Because when I was reading comics, even independent comics pretty much were like big muscle superhero things. Even Youngblood and and Spawn and all of these things were like big muscly like beat 'em up superheroes, and like it's just not generally my jam.
Hmm.
Especially as I grew up, and so to see what what people were doing and the more nuanced work and how beautiful all of it was. I don't remember the exact book, but I definitely, it was that stack of comics that my manager at the time gave me that really opened my eyes to what comics could do and made me fall in love with the medium that I had not read in so long. And it's interesting because people always, I think that is one of the things that gives me like my kind of the style that my books have, because I always came from sort of animation and movies and TV more, and I never really responded. Like so many of my indie creator friends talk about the Marvel and DC comics that they read growing up, and while I did read comics for a long time, and I have like stacks and boxes of comics back from back a day, like the things that really influenced me were the indie comics of the early
Hmm.
2000s.
Were there any particular writers that that kind of jumped out at you? Because you see, because they weren't maybe the superhero types that you were interested in or were used to.
Well, the definite one that I have the most affinity for is Brian K. Vaughan. He really, the Why the Last Man, not so much Ex Machina, but Why the Last Man showed me kind of this. I really loved how much dialogue and art were used and how he used them together. So many comic book artists and writers especially are like they think that the way to make a good comic or to prove that the writer is important is to just fill every panel with tons of dialogue. And Brian K. Vaughan had I think does a really good job of mixing how much how much words and how much and art on the page. So he was the biggest influence when I came back to comics.
So let's talk a little bit about Ichabod Jones. What was what's the premise, and what inspired you to write it?
Sure. So, Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter is about a mental patient that escapes an asylum and becomes a monster hunter during the apocalypse, but doesn't know if he's killing monstrous humans or it's all in his head the whole time. So, he's already he starts the book in an asylum, and he's already killed a bunch of people and thought they were monsters once. And so it's now happening again. And the question is he really in this apocalypse or is it not? It has a very kind of the Max vibe, except instead of being a superhero, it's sort of well, I mean, I guess he's being his own kind of superhero. Of course, I didn't know about Sam Keith or the Max when I was writing this book. It was really my screw you to publishers. So I had a book called The Wannabes, which was the first book I ever did. And I brought it to San Diego Comic-Con, an ashcan, 8-page ashcan, down to Comic-Con 2010. And I showed it to a bunch of publishers, and they all told me basically no. Some of them just laughed me out of the room. The nicest one said, "Why would I make independent superhero comics when I could just have Marvel and DC do that?" It's lovely that since then, so many great independent comics that are superheroes have come out. There weren't that many back in 2010. So I'm not saying that they were wrong. All I'm saying is, like, when I look at things like Kinetic or any of the number of Like Father Like Daughter, or any of the hundreds of great superhero comics that have come out of the indie press, then I have to like chuckle a little bit. So I went home from San Diego, and you have to understand that like comics is super expensive to make. Not as expensive as making movies and TV, but like it's not like you can just pull $2,000 out of thin air. So like I was in the hole. Like I had pulled up what I thought was all of the money that I had access to make these 8 pages, and like to be roundly rejected, I was like kind of devastated. And I went home, and I was like, okay, so like I'm going to make another one, but if I'm going to make another one, I want it to be as if I'm not going to get rejected from comics, I want to be rejected for the right reasons, which is like to make something that's so weird and out there that like they have to say no because there's just nothing in that genre. And again, I did not know about the Max back then, but still, I mean, the Max to Ichabod is a very long gulf to fill. And then you think about things like Legion, but like Legion was like, Legion was 2015-16 when the TV show came out. And so I know the Legion like was a comic book character, but when that started becoming popular, it was way after Ichabod. So I decided that I wanted to make like what was the most unlikely hero imaginable. And the one thing that comics did a lot of with psychopathic or mentally people with mental illnesses was they made them like the bad guy. Even if they were the star of the book, they were like objectively bad. And I wanted Ichabod to definitely be a hero and to explore the idea of like what happens. Like can somebody who is objectively evil in the eyes of society redeem themselves, even if it's only in this apocalyptic landscape? So the thing that's great about Ichabod is all of the things that made him quote unquote evil in the real world are the things that make him a hero in this post-apocalyptic one.
And you're part of the Kickstarters for Volume 2, so there's already one volume out there, right?
Yeah, the first volume launched in 2014. The second volume started production last year in 2019, and we are currently in production on the last half of issue 12, which is the last issue of the third volume. So we have finished the first, the second, And we actually, like, there will be a third volume for sure, because we're, well, knock on wood, I guess, in a month we're going to have the final pages for the issue 12. So yeah, it's for 10 years I told people there would never be more Ichabod, and now there seems to be. I mean, I've given Renzo the 4th volume, which I plan to be the last volume, at least for this arc. And so I'm hoping that we can reach $20,000, and so I can give him the go ahead to start production on that volume right after this one starts, right after this Kickstarter ends.
Yep.
This Kickstarter ends on October 1st. Renzo usually gets me new pages around like the 7th to 10th of the month. And so assuming this, like he will be able to start the new volume, hopefully, you know, in the middle of October, and then we'll have that done right around the middle of next year, and then we'll run the 4th Kickstarter either around this time next year or in the beginning of 2022.
Okay. So how did you how did you find out about Renzo, you know, as the artist? You know, did you search him out, or just kind of find him somewhere and see if he, you know, ask him if he was interested? What was it about his work that, you know, made you think that he was the right, you know, had the right style for the book?
Yeah, so they don't so much exist anymore, at least not the powerhouse level that they were back when I started comics. But Digital Webbing and Pencil Jack were the 2 places that I posted about this book. And Renzo was one of 6 artists that that replied, and one of only 3 that gave me test pages. And he just captured Ichabod so beautifully. So it's one thing I learned about cartoons when I was a kid was the more cartoonish stuff looks, the more violence you will allow it to get away with. And it was really important for me that it was not stomach churning the things that you were seeing Ichabod do. And that you didn't hate Ichabod, you like still had empathy for him. And the 4th page was basically the test page. The first page of the 4th page of the first issue was the test page for Ichabod that Renzo sent in, and he captured these like big blue, like naive eyes of this character so perfectly that I knew at that moment I was actually ready to hire somebody else. And then Renzo sent me this page. I was like happy with the test page that the other person brought in, but when Renzo sent me in his inks and then his colors after that, I just knew like it had to be him, because he captured this wide-eyed innocence, and in the way that I write Ichabod, where like he's a stone cold killer, like he killed a bunch of people. I mean, he did think that it was like his job, like that he was a messenger from God, and you know he was doing God's justice, but he still killed a bunch of people, and so it was really hard to build empathy for him. And I needed that empathy to exist like immediately. Like I needed you to love Ichabod, even though he was a killer, or at least empathize with him immediately, and then you can grow to love him throughout the course of the series. Yeah. So Renzo brought in, you know, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and the old SLG books and just so many like wonderful influences into this book that he really showed sort of the humanity of Ichabod.
So this isn't your this obviously if I mean you kickstarted the first volume, but you've also run a couple other kickstarters for other things. I was looking at, you know, kind of your list of campaigns, and I think I remember seeing it's the kids book about Cthulhu. Is that correct?
Cthulhu is hard to spell. That's the most popular book that my company's ever put out, that I've ever really put out. That book alone, it's the second and third. It's really the second and third book of an anthology series, the Monster Anthology series. Mm-hmm. The first one's called Monsters and Other Scary Shit, and then the second one's called Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, and then Cthulhu is Hard to Spell: The Terrible Twos. So the first book, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, is actually the book that broke me out as an independent creator. It's the book that really like showed me that I could do it full time. Before then I was still doing it full time. I've been doing it full time for just about a year and a half, and it was a struggle. And I was not doing nearly as well on Kickstarter. And then that book came out and it raised $27,000. And then the Pixie Dust book came out and it raised $25,000 later that year. And it like literally paid back production costs. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't understand that like independent comics, because they cost so much, they rarely like you are generally lucky to pay back production or printing costs. So to be able to pay back production, printing, and all other shipping and all other costs immediately at the launch of a book is a huge deal. That is why people generally split up the issues, issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they run them over several years. I'm very impatient. I don't like waiting several years to do a book. So I end up, doing these books, like doing full volumes. And the only reason I'm able to do full volumes is because that big launch led to so many other things. And it led to me being able to pay off all of the production and printing costs of the book, which generally costs me. I mean, each of the books you see behind me, well, not so much the comics, not so much the novels, but the comics, at least, all of those trades cost about $20,000 to get out the door. And so, and that's not abnormal in the course of doing comics. So to be able to have a book that does like Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, which raised $40,000 almost, and then a second one that raised $30,000, and to be able to pay back all of those costs and recoup all of them, and then and then go into the launch of the book on Amazon or at shows free and clear was a huge, huge weight off of my shoulders.
I can imagine. So let's so the current Kickstarter that you're running, tell me a little bit about the levels of or rewards that if they.
Well, I'm pretty simple. I have a digital tier, where you can get issue 1, issue 2, volume 1, volume 2, volume 1 and 2. That's 5 for issue 1 for volume 1, 10 for volume 2, or 15 for volume 1 and 2. Then we have some audio perks. So if you like the audio commentary, I do audio commentary for every volume, and you can pick that up for something like $20 and $30, I believe. We have a special pin, which is a pin of my face. You can get that, I believe, for $23. The $23 is, and all of my shipping, that also includes shipping, but it also includes volume 1, and audio commentary, or volume 2 and audio commentary, and the pin. So you're getting quite a bit of digital rewards for that. I even have for $1, you're going to get the pencil, the penciled first issue of Ichabod Jones, so you can actually see all of the pencils. And more importantly, we just released this Fundle Bundle this morning, which if you scroll up, you can see just by backing, once we fund, you're going to get all 12 of those comic books, some trades and some comics, but you're going to get all of those included in your pledge, even if you pledge for only $1. Then we're not doing. I don't do Kickstarters unless it's novels. I don't do soft cover. I only do hardcover. So the first edition hardcover is $40. Special thanks is $50, and then the pin and the book is $60. And then from there, really, it's just like, how many books do you want? There's 2 book bundles, 3 book bundles, 4 book bundles, digital bundles. Goes all the way up to an all-in perk, which has everything from every single hardcover, plus every single digital book, plus every single pin that we have in stock, for I think is $340. So I'm pretty simple when it comes to these books. I know a lot of people do 50, 60 different perks. I try to keep it the books, the digital versions of the books, and then a pin. I try and do one new pin every time we have a campaign.
I think when I was kind of to take it back, I think this was the picture. The picture was the one that kind of grabbed me when I was looking, through everything. I don't know. There's just something about that picture that grabs me and makes me want to check it out. I just
Yeah, and that's the first page of the book. That's after he starts hearing the voice in his head again, and the voice. So he's sitting on the edge of his, in the middle of his padded cell,
hmm
and the door clicks open, and there's a voice in his head that says, "Ichabod, Ichabod, the time has come, to like fulfill your great purpose and become a monster hunter." And from that, he starts walking down this sort of like weirdly distorted hallway. And then the third page is him finding the first monster. And so I don't believe in slow builds. I guess you really get smacked into it right in the thing, and the rest of that first issue was just him trying to escape this crazy monster.
hmm
And as he's like as you're getting acclimated to what's going on, and anyone can pick up the first issue for free on the page.
hmm
You just go there in the very top, says click here to get the first issue of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter for free. You join our mailing list, and then you get a little bit more information from there. But that's this is from the first 8 issues. The Necromonica, who is the woman that you saw with the green eyes, she's the
Yeah.
first wizard of the apocalypse. She's the big reveal character from the second volume. So Monica Fletcher was a researcher of ancient languages at Stanford, and she is like, when the apocalypse happened, she had control of the Necronomicon, the Necronomicon, and it's allowed her to become the first wizard of the apocalypse. And right there, she was talking about the history of the demons and angels of old, and what
hmm
the origins of the apocalypse were. Which it was the hardest part of doing the second volume, was fulfilling all of the promises and all of the questions that people had asked me over the first 4 issues of Ichabod,
hmm
and still seeding new interesting ideas and challenges for the upcoming issues, and that people will want to continue on until the end, which hopefully we'll go more than 16 issues, but
hmm
the 4th volume is going to wrap everything up that we've talked about in like hopefully a tidy bow.
Yeah. So, what? I mean, this is kind of a weird time to be doing a Kickstarter, and having done them in the past. Did you have any reservations about doing it, or was it just kind of you know
I mean, I
that
don't have
you
a choice.
yeah yeah
This is how I make. This is the only option and only avenue available for me to raise
hmm
funds to continue to make books.
yeah
So I can't do shows. I can't do bookstores, and really, like, don't have a distributor. So unless I'm doing Facebook ads, really the only option is Kickstarter.
hmm
So yeah, it really was a kick in the teeth when then that last round of stimulus stopped, and people stopped getting that $600 additional money. It's very difficult to get up every morning and uh, think that the books you make matter, because like the world is literal. I live in Los Angeles. The world is literally burning around me. The entire West Coast is burning. Most of the West is burning, from Montana to Utah to Colorado to Idaho, and then the whole West Coast. So it's difficult, but I try to remember that it's the world entropies to chaos and disorder, and creating is the ultimate act of defiance when in the face of all of the crap that is out
yeah
there. It's the antithesis to destruction. So I try to remember that, if I really want to fight the destruction of the world, then the counter to that is creating and putting something out into the world that's brand new, which is usually very hard. I mean, it's usually hard in the best of times to put out something new because, frankly, like my books are an unnecessary addition to life. I mean, books are an unnecessary addition to life. Like when you think of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's, 3 or 4, the fourth tier. It's not going to, you can't eat a book. You can't hold a book and feel like, and you can't use a book as shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard, but, on the same time that it's not an essential component of life. It also is an essential component of life because like creation and beauty and having something to distract you from all of the destruction and to edify your soul is just as valid and important as like the essential piece. I mean, what is the point of eating and and drinking water and exercising if like all you get to do is sit in your house and like watch the world burn?
Right.
So I try to remember that part of it. I try to remember that though no one would say that like a comic book is as essential as food, shelter, love, uh, or water. On some level, it's the thing that makes life worth living. It's the thing that takes us out of our own minds. That takes us out of our own lives that we're living for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to double down on that. I try to double down on the idea that this is a counter to all of the horrible things in the world. That this is that this is me planting a seed of creation in a world that is bent on destruction and bent on not acknowledging the true power of art. And it's an act of rebellion against a bitter and uncaring universe that somebody can make something and then somebody else can see that thing and believe that it is worth having and
Mm-hmm.
then buy it. It's a magical transaction every time, whether someone's reading the book for free and enjoying it, but especially when they are seeing something and saying, yes, I'm willing to pay that price. And I know that like $40 is not it's almost a ludicrous price to pay for like a piece of art, but at the same time, it's like these people are like that's how much it costs to make and to make an expression of my soul and that it can resonate with so many people. Every time it's magic and so it's hard to run these campaigns in the best of times,
Yeah.
but in the worst of times it really shows you that like art really matters still. Like there are people that still believe in art and believe in me and believe in Ichabod, and that strengthens me as much as it or more than the destruction depletes me. And knowing that it will come out and knowing that like I can continue something and knowing it's been 10 years since people have since I've like had production on a full book going is kind of it's kind of incredible that this little thing that like my mind made up and I willed into existence with the help of my team and I went around the country to hundreds of shows to show that Ichabod and to try and build him an audience, that like all of that sort of worked
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in a
No. Well. Yeah.
way is amazing. Like it's incredible. And while it's hard, it also fills me with a lot of joy that even in the worst time that I've had in my lifetime, people are still buying art and they're
Mm-hmm.
still buying these weird creations that come out of mine and a lot of other creators' brains.
Yeah, and I hope that the question didn't kind of put you on the spot, but I was just going to say that it looks like your Kickstarter's doing really well. You have 420 backers, and you're you know just almost just shy of your goal. and there's still over a week left to go. So
Yeah, I mean, it's hope. I'm hopeful. I mean, we're pulling out all the stops. I'm doing a lot of swaps. I'm trying to get the word out there on all of these shows. I mean, we're not there yet.
no,
And really, as I mentioned, like it cost $20,000 to do a book, and like you could tell that the cost, the amount of money that we made is not $20,000.
right.
So the number that we said is not. So we're really hoping to hit 20 grand, but $17,666 is like the bare minimum to get this thing over the finish line. But yeah, I mean, the thing with these books is these books pay for other books. Like I don't really, I mean, I draw a minute salary for my company, but like these books help me make more Ichabod, and they help me make more anthologies, and they help me make more novels, and they help me. I just last week started a new artist on a new project because of like Ichabod and because of the Cthulhu book, and these are things that spreading the buying the books from independent creators and small presses. Like, I mean, we're in it to make books. We're in it to make things. And we're this is not a good business to be in. Publishing margins are terrible. It really is a labor of love for everybody. At least that's not on like the Simon and Schuster level. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that are just trying to get the IP and then sell them to Hollywood, but those people very rarely last in this business for very long. I've been doing this now for a long time, and all of the companies that were just in it for the quick Hollywood money, they tend to last 2 to 3 years and then they're gone.
Yeah.
So the people that are in it for the long haul, like they're doing it for love. Like they're doing it, whether they're making $1,000 or $100,000 on the campaign. Scott Snyder is doing a big campaign out there, and even Keanu Reeves is doing a campaign. But like, I choose to believe that like even those people are in it for creating more stuff. In fact, Scott Snyder in his video says, "I'm not going to take any money from this. It's all just to make stuff, to make these things." And so yeah, it is going well. 15. I can't sneeze at $15,000, but like we're gonna need probably 180 more backers to hit our internal goal.
Yeah.
And that internal goal is really important because so I had a campaign earlier this year, the Cthulhu book. The Cthulhu's Hard to Spell Terrible 2 is raised $31,000. The first one raised $39,000. People would say like, well, why are you complaining? Like, it made $30,000. And I'm like, yeah, like, so what if I went into your bank account and just pulled out $8,000 right now? Like that's nuts. It's not, and like that money gets you through 5-6 months. It also, that money funds a book. That money, like $8,000 can fund production, not printing or anything, but like it can fund production on a book, or 10 books if you're doing like novels. So like, well, yes, I am very, very thankful that we hit $31,000 and 750 backers, and like that was wonderful. Still, it was still $8,000 less than our internal numbers said that we were going to hit, and so we had to scrape, and then the pandemic hit and everything like collapsed. So it's like we couldn't even make that money back at shows.
Yeah.
So we basically broke even on that $30,000 campaign, which seems crazy, but like you pay 100, you pay 70 artists, cover artists, printing, shipping, all the other stuff. Like it just took a lot to get. It takes a lot to get these books out, and so yeah, I mean, we're incredibly happy because it allows us to make more ambitious projects. It shows that these books, these weird books, are worth making. And
Definitely.
on the open market, they wouldn't seem like they're worth making because they're very weird and they're very eclectic tastes. And so, the fact that people are buying them and buying them in numbers that allow us to make books and not just, make cheap books or make like mass market books or like make books that are going to sell well, like we can really take big swings
Yeah.
and look at new artists and look at new kind of art styles and instead of choosing, I had this decision to choose between a couple of artists for this last project, and I ended up choosing the one that in my gut was right, felt right, even though that artist might not be the most marketable. It's like,
Right.
this is the artist that like A, I want to work with, and B, I think is right for this project. And the only way that you're able to make that work is by going to Kickstarter and like crushing it. And I've never met somebody on Kickstarter who ended the day and was like, "Yep, like we got all the money now. We got all the money we ever need."
Right.
Everyone from like $100,000 campaigns, the campaigns like Pebble Watch, like they are using and utilizing all of those funds to do the things that they need to do. And I'm a pretty ambitious human when it comes to my writing schedule. I'm planning to do 4 Kickstarters next year. I have written 8 novels for those Kickstarters. Plus, we are just about to finish Ichabod Volume 3, and then I'm in production on another book. So that's 10 books that I plan on putting out next year. And that is all being funded by these Kickstarters this year, fund the next year and the following year's production slate. So, yeah, we're in a good position. I think we have a little over 2 weeks left, and we've raised $15,400 or something like that, almost $15,500, which is $2,100 from goal. But really, our ambition is like we really want this to hit 20, because that means that we can go into the next year with me not having to do a lot of other stuff. Because like how my company usually operates is, I'm a creative, so I do like 50 other things.
Right.
And like it allows me to focus on one thing, which is the making the books and making the projects and writing and instead of having to do 900 other tasks.
True. I completely understand. So, if there's, I don't know if there's anything else. I think we pretty much covered, a lot about the book. Do you want to kind of give a final pitch and like include where people can find you on your social media links?
Sure, absolutely. So, Ichabod Jones is about a mental patient that escapes an asylum and becomes a monster hunter during the apocalypse. But he doesn't know if he's killing monsters, humans, or it's all in his head the whole time. So what it's really about, though, is a broken human trying to rebuild themselves. So he has been. Ichabod is the hardest book that I write, both emotionally, mentally, physically. Just is a very hard book to get over the finish line. Mm-hmm. And I spend a lot of months thinking about how all of the pieces are going to fit together before I actually sit down to write. And it's mostly hard because Ichabod is sort of my neuroses, like in comic book form, and so I when I wrote Ichabod, it was a story about a broken person who was basically cast off from the society that they wanted to live in, because they were following the voices in their head or the things that they had. And the idea was like, can this person redeem themselves? Can this person prove their worth in a society that doesn't want them? And has cast them off. Not even doesn't want them, like actively has cast them off and thrown them in a small padded cell where they don't have to look or deal with them. So it's told against this big dark fantasy action adventure comedy setting, but I try to infuse all of those things, both my own history of mental illness, having depression and anxiety and all of the other stuff that goes into me, and sort of flush it out through Ichabod, or at least channel it through Ichabod. And I really think the second volume is where you start seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's where you start understanding the world at large. It's where you start getting answers to the questions that came up in the first volume. And I really hope that you guys check it out. Again, it is, if you can read it as just this really fun action adventure, dark fantasy world, but I really tried to imbue every page with this mind screw of like what is the truth and what's really happening, but also like the tragedy of Ichabod is that he wants to be a monster. He takes on this mantle of monster hunter and the hero of the apocalypse. And but like if he succeeds, he goes from being a hero to a world where he is the villain, and yet he still chooses to do it anyway. And that's sort of the tragic arc of Ichabod throughout this whole series.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for people to check it out. So again, it's Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter. You can get to it at russellnohelty.com/Ichabod Volume 2, or just going to Kickstarter.com and looking up Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter.
All right. Well, I'd like to again thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and if you whenever you have your next projects coming up, if you like to return, then you're more than welcome to, and we can talk about those and hopefully help you get the word out about those too for you.
I would love to. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me.
All right, and I'll include the links to the Kickstarter in the show notes, and then I'll also any social media links that you want to maybe send me. Then I'll be glad to include those too.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you for taking the time this evening, and stay healthy and stay safe. All right, catch you later.